right, we're back with Rahul Sharma, Senior Product Manager for AWS CloudFormation, here to talk to us about the launch of AWS CloudFormation Public Registry. Rahul, welcome to the show. What is this launch all about?
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me in, Robert. Excited to share about this launch. So the CloudFormation Public Registry is a new searchable collection of extensions that developers can use to discover, provision, and manage third-party extensions, which include provisioning logic, resources, and reusable building blocks, CloudFormation modules, published by the AWS Partner Network community, as well as the developer community. So we are very excited about this launch and looking forward for our developers to use this new discoverable public registry.
So tell us a little bit about what this registry, what problem it's solving.
Absolutely, Jenna, happy to answer that. So developers want to model and automate their cloud environments, ranging from simple applications to elaborate distributed systems that can contain third-party SaaS resources alongside AWS resources. For example, developers want to use third-party monitoring solutions to monitor their applications running on EC2 instances. Or developers want to embed third-party cloud security products to ensure that their workloads running on, like, say, containers or serverless services are performing as per their intended functions. Basically, these developers want a single infrastructure as code tool to achieve this, and also a browsable and easily discoverable set of solutions that extend CloudFormation to help them build their cloud infrastructure. The underlying challenge today for our customers is that they provision these third-party resources by authoring either custom provisioning logic that can either be time-consuming or use third-party vendors like SDKs and APIs along with custom code libraries. As you can imagine, like, both these create solutions that can be time-consuming as well as can be hard for developers. And that's where the CloudFormation Public Registry comes into the picture, a new searchable collection of extensions that allows developers a single tool to discover, provision, and manage their cloud infrastructure, which consists of third-party as well as AWS resources, at the same time allowing for the discoverability through a selection of extensions by opening CloudFormation up for third-party builders, partners to build extensions, provide a native experience for our developers.
You've mentioned third-party partners, public registry a lot. I'm very curious. So just to be sure I understand what you're saying, what I can find in this public registry when I search for something like serverless, for example, is a bunch of patterns, some of which we might have provided, some of which might come from third-party partners. Is that correct?
That is correct, Robert.
Can you talk a little bit more about that ecosystem? So, for instance, what are some examples of solutions that partners are providing in this registry, and what did that look like? How did they submit that? If you wanted to submit, for example, your own CloudFormation entry into the public registry, how does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely happy to. So to answer the first part, right, like, what are the set of solutions that are available already in our registry, which we launched on 21st of June? So there are a variety of partner solutions that have been, like, published onto the registry, ranging from monitoring as code, security as code, incidents management, as well as cost optimization SaaS solutions as code and resource types, among a vast majority of others. So in order for any publisher or, like, a partner in that case, or any builder to actually come and publish any extension which increases the extensibility for developers to build infrastructure on CloudFormation, they have to essentially carry out 3 steps. It's a straightforward, simple 3-step process. The first is registering themselves as a publisher onto the CloudFormation registry. So when we talk about registration here, we suggest them basically having their identity verified either as an AWS marketplace seller, or verify their identity by connecting their AWS accounts with third-party repos like GitHub and Bitbucket. So that's the first part. The second part is essentially developing those extensions, and they can be either resources or the provisioning logic, right? Or it can be reusable building blocks, which can be directly used in a CloudFormation template like CloudFormation modules. Partners or like builders here have to develop this and get this tested. We ensure a testing in order to like ensure uniformity and standardization for our developers. And once these publishers pass the testing threshold, they are ready to publish. So all they need to do is a single API call and they are live onto the public registry.
Okay, so you've talked a lot about CloudFormation. Can you elaborate on the evolution of CloudFormation and how it really ties into this public registry?
Yeah, sure, Jenna. So CloudFormation has evolved to provide developers with deeper extensibility, which helps provide developers with the necessary building blocks required to build cloud infrastructure, be it like AWS or third-party resources in a safe, repeatable, and predictable manner. To achieve this, we have taken a number of steps that have culminated into the launch of the CloudFormation Public Registry earlier this week. So the process started back in reInvent 2019. We launched a private version of this registry along with CloudFormation's command line interface. The private registry launch was the first step to allow our customers to discover and use resources privately. So we would have like either organizations publish their resources and share it amongst amongst accounts in the organization, or even have few specific partners who would share it privately with end customers. We also launched the command line interface, which was the CloudFormation command line interface, which is an open source tool that enables you to develop and even test out these non-AWS or third-party resources. So we gave the building blocks and tools for like our partner and our builders to actually build this out and ensure that there's a native experience on AWS. So that was step number one. The second was we built the ability to add more extensibility to the registry. And so at reInvent 2020, fast forward 1 year, we launched modules, which are reusable components with opinionated resource configurations, which can be modularized and reused across CloudFormation templates. And fast forward 6 months post reInvent 2020, we are here today. We launched the public registry on 21st of June, making all registry extensions, resources, as well as modules discoverable and available for any developer to browse publicly on our console. We actually welcome partners in the builder community to come publish with us. At the same time, developers can now easily discover resources and modules published by our set of launch partners and subsequently provision and manage them using CloudFormation as a single tool.
It seems you've been talking about two different personas as customers here. On the one hand, you have the end user, and these might be the developers who are composing infrastructure out of CloudFormation templates and their component modules. And on the other hand, you've elaborated on this new user persona, which is the publisher, where this is somebody like a partner or a third-party vendor who is publishing prescriptive best practices for deploying their specific service or collection of services, if I understand that correctly. Is that correct so far?
Yeah, that is absolutely accurate, Robert.
Okay, so can you help me elaborate on the benefits that each of these respective target personas get? I think we talked a little bit about the benefits from consumers, but maybe talk about the benefits to the publishers first, and then maybe cover some of the any of the contextual pieces for consumers as well.
Yeah, happy to. So when we talk about the publisher benefit, the first and foremost point here is, as a publisher on the registry, you get to bring your solution to a global set of worldwide customers who currently use CloudFormation as an infrastructure as code tool. You have the potential to increase the discoverability, outreach, and potential usage of your solutions by a vast set of like customers who are currently using CloudFormation as the tool of choice. And in addition to discoverability, outreach, and new and potentially usage, you can also like have potentially new customers use your solutions as well. So that's on the publisher benefit. And as far as the end user or the end customer benefits, who are essentially developers or DevOps engineers who are using this, I would say I would categorize the benefits into two buckets, right? Like there is a time saving benefit, which we briefly alluded to earlier. I'm going to elaborate on that. And the second being a fully native experience. And I'm going to give some examples to just highlight what are some of the benefits developers get. So let's talk about the first point, the time saving benefits. We talked about earlier how developers want a single infrastructure as code tool to easily discover, provision, and manage solutions alongside AWS resources without having to spend time authoring custom provisioning logic. With CloudFormation Public Registry, customers can actually discover these third-party solutions and provision them in a few clicks in a secure and scalable manner without having them to author custom provisioning logic, which can often take time. Like for example, developers want to bake security into their DevOps workflow. However, automating security requires various security vendors, SDK and REST APIs, and often using custom code libraries, which developers can find cumbersome and time-consuming time to time. With the public registry, baking network security into the DevOps process becomes simple without a lot of moving parts, so that like both your cloud operations and network security teams can like quickly get started. This is where solutions from some of our partners who partnered with us in this launch, such as Trend Micro, Aqua Security, FireEye, Sysdig, and Sneak, come into the picture. The security teams can now use the CloudFormation Public Registry to automate their workflows. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You have monitoring as solution, you have incidence management, cost optimization, among others.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point there, which is that in some cases, some of these partners know better than we do about how to configure their specific services. In fact, I suspect that's pretty common now that I'm saying it. And so tell me if I've got this right, but it sounds like we're almost kind of leveraging their expertise to making sure that they are able to communicate the best ways to use and deploy their services.
You are correct here, Robert. Exactly. So because partners here have the flexibility to model the resources in a way which is best practice, or which essentially like acts as a guiding tool for end users to actually use and deploy their solutions in conjunctions with AWS services and features, customers get the best of both worlds, like not just the benefit of like easy discovery, but also based on the guidance and the solutions that has been brought to them by the partners. But in addition, there's also the fully native experience that I want to also emphasize on for developers using the public registry. So customers can now leverage various managed experiences functionalities of AWS, such as AWS config or drift detection. Just to give you an example, developers can now use AWS config to manage the compliance of third-party resources. Like resource types on the registry will be automatically tracked in AWS config as configuration items if you create, update, or delete those resources, whether they are AWS resources or third-party resources. Similarly, customers can or developers can use CloudFormation functionality such as drift detection, which allows them to identify resource drift in their stack from its expected template configuration. So all of these functionalities get unlocked for end users as well.
Yeah, I really like this. It's really preventing people from, pushing files around, sharing stuff that way. And it's going to make it so that it's just more consistent for developers to, be able to take advantage of those security benefits of third parties type of resources. So since this is a public registry, how are we ensuring that what is being published to it is quality, and do we have a bar that we're setting? How are we measuring that and communicating that to customers?
Yeah, you bring up a really important point here, Jenna, and we value a standardized and consistent experience for our end customers. And to ensure that, we actually enforce a set of testing guidelines, which we briefly alluded to earlier, wherein each publisher has to actually comply with. These vary depending upon the extension that publishers are publishing. It can either be provisioning logic, resources, or modules. So I'll give you an example for one of the criteria for, say, publishing a resource type or a third-party resource. So for example, as a resource publisher, we enforce a minimum quality bar in terms of handler contracts. These basically define a set of specific unambiguous rules which highlight what each handlers, like which each action, like create, read, update, delete list, must follow and must comply with. Following the contract allows customers to interact with all these resources under a uniform set of behaviors and expectations, and prevents creation of unintended or duplicate resources. And just to give you an example, right? Like, and these rules are actually like public in our documentation, so that like any publisher can actually can sign up and see how they need to model their extensions here. So just to give you an example, a create handler must not return, say, a success until all the resource properties included in that create request is complete. Similarly, for module publishers, we enforce a distinct set of rules as well. Like, just to give you an example, only those modules that have resources supported in the public registry can pass the test. So you cannot just publish a module if you have a resource in it which is not in the registry. So you have to do that first before those get published. So these are some steps which help with uniformity and quality.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, how do customers know that this is a quality extension? How do they verify the identity of this publisher?
Yeah, so there are actually two mechanisms here for actually customers to verify the identity, and we'll highlight that in the demo as well. So you can actually you can first identify the verification status of the publisher, like whether they have been verified as AWS Marketplace seller, or have they like say linked their account with GitHub or Bitbucket. Every publisher today has to be verified by either one of these mechanisms, and their extensions are validated against best practices. Similarly, what we also do with the second mechanism is the name of the publisher. So we actually extract the name from their public profile associated with either AWS Marketplace, GitHub, or Bitbucket. And we actually encourage publishers to add their public profile and associate it with either of these identity verification mechanisms. So when you actually browse the registry, you'll be able to see who that extension is actually published by. You can see the name of the publisher. Like if it's published by MongoDB, you'll actually see that there.
Got it. Great.
So if I have an organization account, I've got a, let's say a really large engineering team, a really large DevOps team, lots of different divisions with different IAM roles and permissions. How do I activate access? How do I control access to the public registry? Is it kind of a free-for-all where everyone can run everything, or how do I lock that down?
Yeah, so it's not free for all actually. And here's where we actually have this explicit activate action where you have to opt in to use these third-party extensions, right? Like, so you have to actually like specify your role, etc., to like activate it before you actually use it. But then the second part of your question is interesting, wherein like say you want to use this across your organization. Like, how can you scale it in a way so that you can activate it in a single operation, right? So customers can today use one of CloudFormation's functionalities called stack sets, which allows customers to manage stacks across accounts and regions in a single operation, including deploying to an entire organization or even specific organizational units. They can today, with this public registry launched, we actually also launched a new resource type called AWS CloudFormation type activation. So using this resource type, they can basically specify the resource properties by highlighting which publisher do they want to activate, which resource extension do they want to activate, which version, etc. And then condense it in a template and use stack sets. So in a single operation, they can activate it across their accounts and even across regions as well.
Wow, that sounds very comprehensive. I want to see a demo of this. Jenna, what do you think?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, let's do it. We're going to switch to a holding screen for just a few moments, but we'll be right back. All right, we're back. We have with us special guest Craig Lefkowitz, Senior Developer Advocate on AWS CloudFormation. Craig, I hear you're going to show us the demo. Craig, can you try speaking again? I don't think we're getting any audio from you.
How about now?
Ah, much better.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Double muted.
Good.
Double muted. Yeah. Everyone makes this mistake a couple times a day. Don't worry about it. Let's start from
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah. The most common phrase I think of 2020 is you're on mute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Robert, for the introduction. So the first thing that I wanted to show is the console search experience. So to get to the CloudFormation Public Registry, we're going to navigate to the CloudFormation console, which I'm here now. And then on the left-hand side in the menu, I'm going to click on public extensions. And from there, you can filter by extension type. And you can also filter by the publisher, AWS or third party. Since we're talking about the public registry, gonna filter by third party. And as you can see, there's a list of resource types in the console, and it's sorted alphabetically. And as Rahul was talking about earlier, extensions come in all shapes and sizes. We have extensions from our quick starts team that deploy EKS clusters, as well as Kubernetes type that manage Helm. We have types from partners such as Aqua and Atlassian, Datadog, FireEye, Mongo, to name a few, that provision and manage their products. And we also have extensions from the developer community as well. Anybody can publish a module, and I'll show you how you can become a publisher later on in the demo. So notice that all of the extensions here are labeled with the publisher name, and they also show how they verified themselves. Rahul and Jenna were talking earlier about verification and quality bars. And so here we can see that when we want to enable a extension, we can be assured we have a level of trust of this extension because we know that they were verified through the marketplace and that MongoDB published this module. We can also see that this module was last updated on the 4th, and that it was indeed tested to meet that those set of criteria, those contract tests that Rahul talked about earlier. So that provides a level of trust to folks who are interacting with the registry and want to be ensured that these are quality extensions. So I'm going to show an example from Datadog, and because you can see there's a lot of extensions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the search
Craig,
bar here. Yeah.
Just real quick, while we're still on this screen and we're looking at these different cards with these resource type extensions, correct?
Yes.
So one thing I noticed is this last updated tag. Is there something that we can use, like a semantic version that is part of the test? So I guess what I'm getting at is, let's say you published a template over here that I don't know, sets up an S3 bucket for me, right? And I say, wow, that looks really useful. I'm going to deploy this. I do that, and now it's part of my production environment. Mm-hmm. Couple weeks down the road, you publish an update to this thing, and you say, hey, this includes some very important security fixes. I like security. I'm going to click deploy. But is there a way for you as the publisher to communicate any sort of semantic API breaking changes that I need to be aware of?
Yes, actually, let me show you that. It's a perfect segue. So I'm going to search here for Datadog. Let's bring up that extension here. So when you activate an extension, you are presented with a semantic version, and the publisher has control of this. They, as like you said, maybe a security fix gets pushed out. or they want to maybe include some extra features. What you can do as part of the activation process, I'm just going to go ahead and click activate here. As part of the process, there's a control on versioning. So you can choose to automatically receive minor versions automatically. So if there's a security fix and the publisher pushes it out, if you have this setting set to on, you'll get the latest and greatest. You can also choose to turn it off if you don't want to receive those updates automatically. Okay, cool. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Cool. All right, so let's go into a little bit more of the configuration for this particular type. So the first option that you have here is you can override the default. And that allows you to specify an alias to use instead of the extension name that's provided by the publisher. And this can help avoid any collisions between extensions if your company has any specific naming requirements, or if you want to enable different configurations for the same extension. Perhaps you have one for prod and one for test. So you can have different versions of the type. This particular type requires an execution role, which I'm going to populate here. I've done that before the demo. And this enables the extension to assume the permissions that it needs to provision the resources in your account. Here we have a logging config. That's optional. If you wanted to configure specific logging to CloudWatch, I'm going to skip that for simplicity. We talked about the versioning. And down here, lastly, we have a configuration section, which we're going to leave with the configure now check so that we can go right into the configuration screen. I'm going to go ahead and click activate, remove the schema to get a little bit more screen real estate. And so I can show you the configuration. So here, we'll set the configuration alias, which I've done before this demo. And we can take a look at the configuration here. So this will vary based on the publisher. So for Datadog, we need to specify the credentials for our Datadog account, specifically the API key and the application key. And by setting these values, any consumer of this resource type in your organization will use these credentials in order to manage a Datadog monitor. So let's say that you're a DevOps engineer and you want developers in your organization to be able to use the company's Datadog account to deploy monitors for their applications. So by setting the credentials for this resource type here, you are enabling any user of this resource type in your account to provision a monitor using the company's Datadog account. So now that I'm going to go ahead and finish the activation here by clicking configure extension. And now that my extension is activated, we talked earlier, Rahul was talking about, the extensions that are available, is it like a free for all? Are all of the extensions immediately available to everybody that uses the account? And my answer is no. There is a separation of duties here where we activate the extensions that we want our company to, we want developers to use in our account. And that's what we've done here. So I can go to the activated extensions section, and I can see all of the extensions that are activated in my account. So I'm going to switch to the third party to show all the extensions that are third party. And I see that in addition to the Datadog extension that I just activated, I have a few others in there. So now that I've activated and it's ready to be used. The next thing I'd show you is how I would deploy and manage a Datadog monitor in a template. And as luck would have it, I have one ready to go. So this is a pretty simple template. I wanted to keep it, really straightforward for the demo. It's a single resource, and it's of type Datadog Monitor because we're using Datadog's monitor feature. I have a few properties set here. There are a number of other optional properties that could be set, but again, I just wanted to keep it simple. So I'm configuring the name of the monitor, the query I'm going to be using for the Datadog monitor, and the type. So I'm gonna flip back to the CloudFormation screen, and I'm gonna go to the stacks menu, where I will go ahead and create a stack using that Datadog extension. I'll click create stack.
You mentioned,
Yep, go ahead.
real quick, you mentioned in the template that you're able to configure some of those properties in there. Does that allow you to override any of the properties that you set in the configuration on the activate side?
Yes, so you can choose. So the activate section that I showed earlier is a centralized way to provide, and so you can override them here on a extension by extension basis, but yeah, so it's overrideable.
Got it.
But yeah, makes it easier if you centralize it.
In this case, you don't want to. Yep.
Yeah, you have like sometimes you have like operations or DevOps engineers, and you have developers and the separation of duties. And
yep,
so
exactly.
forth. Yeah. So so from here, I'm going to upload that template that I just created a second ago. And let's go ahead and deploy that. And give it a stack name. I'll click next and click create stack. All right. So at this point, I've created a Datadog monitor. It's usually pretty quick. And it's just, it's a live demo, so you never know what's going to happen. So everything worked out. Create is complete. So let's take a look at my Datadog console. And here we have the resource, that Datadog monitor that that I just created using a CloudFormation template. So that's great, right? So I've created the Datadog monitor, but I could also modify it. So if I go back here, my template, if I did an update action on this stack, I could change the name of it, or I could change the query parameters. I can update it to whatever I needed to do, and then it would be reflected in the Datadog console. I could also delete it. So if I remove this resource from the stack, it would be deleted in Datadog as well. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. I'm just going to delete here. So if I delete the stack, and this also is pretty quick. If I go back to my Datadog console and I refresh the screen, I should see, yes, indeed, it has been removed. So that's pretty cool, right? I am provisioning and managing a Datadog monitor with CloudFormation, the entire lifecycle from create, update, and to delete. So
yeah, and I just want to add one other thing here. I think there's a lot to unpack. Even though you made it look really easy here, this is pretty profound, because it means that there are a lot of workflows that in the past would have spanned multiple different providers, and it could create a sprawling infrastructure such that your team doesn't really understand what the full extent to what they're operating, especially as individual personnel come and go, institutional knowledge gets lost, maybe the run book is outdated. It feels like this is I'm not saying that this is going to be a silver bullet, nothing ever is, but this feels like another useful tool to try and get that a little bit more under control, right? To make that a little bit more sane, where, okay, well, we already have workflows that or the center of gravity is around CloudFormation, we can get one step closer to, okay, maybe we don't need special knowledge of Datadog. We can manage that resource and its creation and its deletion using the same workflows that we already have. I feel like that's one very powerful thing that although it's understated in the demo, it's super relevant here.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, there's a great use case. We have many customers that use Datadog to monitor their applications. And with this registry, they're able to now deploy and manage their Datadog monitoring configurations alongside their AWS resources, all within CloudFormation. So they don't have to maintain custom scripts. Everything can be defined in a single stack. We all aim for that single source of truth, and it's been made easy here by just being able to activate an extension, make some centralized configuration that enables developers to use these resources that have sometimes pretty specific configurations. So you don't have to burden a developer with knowing, like, the API key and all the other minutia that they don't particularly care about. They just want to monitor. They want to get their product out the door. So it's a really great enabler.
Yeah, another great call out is the integration. Although it was only on screen just for a moment, I believe you had a JSON blob that referenced the secrets manager API key and the application key for Datadog. At no point was there some sort of clear text API key being passed around. This is all using secrets manager, which is we don't have time to go into that exactly, but it's a best practice building block as part of making sure that your infrastructure is as secure as possible. And love to see that it's all baked in here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Security is always a job zero here, and so making sure that we don't have any plain text keys hanging around was critical for getting this as a feature. So yes, absolutely, yeah, and especially for the demo, right? I didn't want to expose my keys. I definitely want to use this Datadog account in the future. So
there's one other thing I wanted to thought I'll share, and then I'll pass the mic back over to you. But this workflow seems particularly useful for customers that are that have infrastructure that is sort of modular by multi-tenancy. So where you have something like, okay, well, I have a publishing workflow, and what I do when I have a new published work order, let's say, is that I spin up a piece of infrastructure. Let's say it's a set of containers to run some batch jobs, and then that part of that environment goes away. And I spin up one of these for each instance, and then it goes away, and spin it up and it goes away, right? That's the kind of that kind of infrastructure I see as being a really good candidate to benefit from these new features, especially when now you have prescriptive guidance from, let's say, the publisher themselves. I saw when you were showing us earlier in the registry itself, all the workflows around Kubernetes, right? I imagine this is going to be really common with containerized workflows, Kubernetes, where you're kind of in that middle territory of, okay, well, we've got this container infrastructure and it's got its own set of rules about lifetime management, all this stuff. How do I reason about this from the AWS side of things? So I feel like that's another pattern that I think is going to benefit a lot from these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. You want your subject matter experts in each domain to be able to share knowledge, and so that others can collaborate easily without having to acquire these specific set of skills. And it's a great collaboration. It enables developers to be able to just kind of pick these components off the shelf using best practices and already configured by the domain experts that know about them. It's a very, very powerful tool. Very good. So I guess the last thing I wanted to show is how folks out there can become a publisher. So earlier I promised that I would show how you could become a publisher, and because the name of the feature that we're showing today is the CloudFormation Public Registry, which means that anyone can publish a CloudFormation extension. So let me show you how you can get started by creating a publisher account. So I'm just going to change my region because I'm already a publisher here in US East 1. I'm gonna just change to West 2. And to create a publisher account, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You just click the publisher menu item here on the left side of the screen. You would click register publisher, and then you can two ways that you can verify your identity. We talked about trust earlier and validation of identity. So if you already have a marketplace account, you can go ahead and use marketplace. But if you don't, you can also verify through GitHub or your Bitbucket account. And that's what I'm going to show today. I'm going to validate through my GitHub account. So I would do that with using CodeStar connections. I have an existing connection already that I've already created. But if you didn't, you would click the Create New Connection button. Go ahead and click Create Connection, and then you could select the provider. Let's say you have a Bitbucket account. Let's put a connection name here. And then I would click Connect to Bitbucket. And from here, we would reach out to your Bitbucket repository and through a set of authorizations, connect your Bitbucket account with your AWS account, and then which would create a CodeStar connection, which you could use to validate your identity. So once you went ahead and did that, you get brought back here to the register publisher screen, and then you would be able to use that connection. Like I said, I'm going to use my GitHub account. And at this point, it's as simple as just accepting the terms and conditions and then clicking register. And that's it. I'm now a publisher. And I can go ahead and publish modules and resource types to the registry, just like MongoDB and Datadog and all the rest. We already have a number of folks from the developer community that are publishing today, and really look forward to seeing folks out there what they could come up with. Some pretty neat ideas I've seen up to the launch of this demo working with partners. So I'm kind of curious to see what our developer community comes up with.